They say silence can be louder than thunder. That morning, inside Maggie's diner, you could have heard a pin drop. The smell of burnt coffee hung in the air, mixed with bacon grease and the faint hum of a jukebox that hadn't worked right since '89. I was wiping down the counter like I'd done 1,000 times before, thinking about bills, about the slow season, about the quiet life that had somehow become my whole world. And then, I heard it, the low growl of an engine. A sound that didn't belong in a sleepy town like ours anymore. When the door swung open, sunlight spilled through like a spotlight on the man who walked in. Black boots. Leather vest with patches that told stories of long roads and rough nights. Long blonde hair that brushed his shoulders, a beard that looked carved by the wind. His eyes, God, his eyes, were the color of storm clouds before rain. Every man in that diner went silent. Forks froze midair. Even old Hank in the corner, who never stopped talking about the good old days, just lowered his mug and stared. And me? I stood there holding a coffee pot, pretending my heart wasn't pounding hard enough to make my apron strings shake. He took a seat at the counter, second stool from the end, right beneath the flickering neon light. Didn't say a word. Just took off his gloves, placed them neatly beside his plate, and looked around like he was measuring every inch of the place. "You serving, sweetheart?" he finally asked, voice deep and rough, like gravel under boots. I nodded, trying to sound steady. "Coffee?" He smiled a little. "Yeah, black as sin." I poured, careful not to spill. My hands weren't steady, though I told myself they were. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something else. Something that made me want to know who he was, and why the air felt charged since he'd stepped through that door. The others kept watching, suspicious, wary. This was small-town America, where people remembered faces, and his was the kind that didn't forget easily. Then, from the corner booth, I heard Earl mutter, "Ain't that one of the Reapers?" The word cut through the room like a blade. Biker club. Trouble. The kind you don't invite in for breakfast. But the man didn't flinch. He just looked up from his cup, met Earl's stare, and said calmly, "Used to be." You could feel the whole room shift. I wanted to say something, break the tension, but words failed me, so I did the only thing I knew, kept working. Refilled cups, cleared plates, pretending not to feel the heat of his gaze following me. When the rush faded and it was just him left, he spoke again. "Quiet town," he said softly. "You like it here?" I shrugged. "It's home. Quiet can be good." He chuckled under his breath. "Yeah. Quiet means nobody's looking for you." That line hung between us, heavy and mysterious. I looked at him, really looked. The tattoos on his forearms, the scars beneath them, the way his shoulders carried years of something unspoken. Regret, maybe, or loss. He caught me staring. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I'm not here to cause trouble, just passing through." But I didn't believe that. Somehow, I knew he wasn't just passing through. Not through this town, not through my life. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Sometimes he'd sit at the same stool, order coffee, maybe pie if I'd baked that morning. We talked, slow at first, like strangers testing the water. About the weather, about roads, about music that used to mean something. He said his name was Cole. No last name, just Cole. He'd been writing alone for a long time, too long, by the sound of it. There was a sadness in him that words couldn't fix, but every time he smiled, really smiled, it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. And somehow, somewhere between pouring his coffee and locking up at closing time, I stopped seeing the leather and started seeing the man beneath it. One evening, when the diner was empty and the sunset turned the world gold, he asked me, "Ever think about leaving?" I froze. "Leaving?" He nodded. "This town. This routine. The same four walls and burnt coffee smell." I laughed nervously. "That's my life you're talking about." "Doesn't mean it has to stay that way," he said quietly. I didn't answer, because deep down, he was right. I had dreamed of leaving once. Riding west, seeing the ocean, finding something beyond the dust and loneliness. But dreams fade when you've got bills to pay and a past that keeps you tied down. He looked at me then, and in his eyes, I saw something raw. the same kind of restlessness that used to live in me. And for a heartbeat, I wondered what it'd be like to leave with him. It was a Friday afternoon when they came, two other bikers, wearing the same patch Cole used to wear. They parked out front, loud engines echoing through the street, and walked in like they owned the place. "Cole," one of them sneered, "you been hidden, brother?" The diner went silent again. Cole stood slowly, his chair scraping against the tile. The air turned thick, heavy. "This ain't your business anymore," he said. One of them smirked. "Everything's our business, till the debt's paid." I could feel my heart race as they moved closer, tension ready to explode. But Cole didn't fight, didn't shout. He just stepped between them and me, like instinct, like protection. "This place is clean," he growled. "You walk out, and you don't come back." Something in his voice, the way it cracked slightly, made the men hesitate. Then, with a glare and a promise of trouble, they turned and left. The silence that followed was deafening. I reached for his arm. "Cole, what?" He shook his head. "You don't need to know, but I did. I needed to know why a man like him carried so much pain. Why he looked like someone who'd been running for years." His stool was empty. No motorcycle outside. Just a folded napkin on the counter with a note scribbled in pencil. "Greater than, thanks for the coffee, and for reminding me what peace feels like." See, I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hand, tears blurring the ink. Life went on, it always does. The regulars came back, the smell of coffee filled the air again, and the jukebox still refused to play the right song. But sometimes when I hear a motorcycle on the highway, I still turn toward the sound. I think about the man who walked into my diner and made the whole room go silent, not because they feared him, but because he carried a truth the rest of us had forgotten. That sometimes, even in the middle of nowhere, love finds a way to walk through the door, wearing leather, carrying ghosts, and leaving your heart changed forever. And maybe that's the thing about silence. Sometimes, it's not about fear or judgment. Sometimes, it's the sound of the world holding its breath, just long enough for love to find its way in.